Hello and welcome to another edition of Indiepocalypse Radio. I am your host Andrew, fresh off I don't know, a earlier pledge drive for Indiepocalypse. I think I'm gonna have to do a redux because of let's see slight scheduling mishap. Who knows? We'll figure it out. We are here with Indiepocalypse, of course, being what is this show? I gotta shake it back and gotta get back into the intro. How do I intro the show? Indiepocalypse, of course, is the monthly anthology of alternative games. Indiepocalypse Radio is kind of like it's halfway between interview show, but mostly hangout companion show, where I talk to people within Indiepocalypse, within games, or within the greater art world. All three of which I have represented here on today's show. Oh, I need to update with the new cover. I forgot that on the stream on the cover reel. We are here with our first guest. Who? Let's see if they're here. Who you may know from I don't know, the general internet. A lot of internet news. I don't know how to say it now. I forgot to ask them how I intro them. If they're here, is GSK. Hello. No, they're
Yo,
not
yo,
here.
how we going?
Okay, you are here. Perfect. Hello. How would you
Yeah.
define your what you do?
Um, you would think I would have an answer for this, but how
Right.
often it comes up because
I don't want to call you a
uh
poster. It feels derogatory.
no, that's fine. The most usual title I'm given when I'm cited for anything is Twitter user. So if you can upgrade me a bit over that, I'll be
Okay, yeah, I
very
would consider
pleased.
poster an upgrade over Twitter user, but that is a weird.
Yeah. The way I typically describe it is that I'm there, yes, obscure junk. I'm gnawing at the heels of other people's work, basically. If there's some niche specific thing that you're interested in, I'll probably be lurking around the fringes somewhere.
Yeah, right. You have
And
I would say with a focus on Japanese games, with especially like ones that are not like U.S. Focused, or they're not often fall within
right.
the typical U.S. lens.
Yes, well, that's sort of me trying to reverse engineer what it is that people actually want to hear about that they're not hearing about from other people.
Right.
And part of it is just me being contrarian and refusing to like things that other people enjoy.
I, I was talking about that earlier today with people and how that is just basically they're asking like, oh, how did you get into like independent stuff? And I think part of the answer is I just wanted to be contrarian and be unrelatable.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm being glib, but my brain really is wired that way. There are so many things that, big mainstream things that just do not penetrate. So, past a certain extent, you really don't have a choice but to go deep in certain niches. And I mean, I enjoy it. Hopefully, other people appreciate it to some extent. And that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, because I mean, niches are a very weird thing because how long is something niche until it is like just like rediscovered 10 years later or whatever, and then it becomes like how many things now that we think of as big important things were like niche in their time. It's almost as if this
Exactly. Well, to give one example,
yeah.
a certain YouTuber recently did, or recently, it's a couple of years old now, a very large expose, I suppose you could say, on Tokimeki Memorial, which in Japan is this big foundational game, but for
Right.
whatever reason never really came overseas. And now the amount of people I hear referencing that game, as if everyone's played it, everyone's familiar with it, everyone has internalized everything it brought to the table, despite the fact that none of the games have ever been localized.
Right.
It's sort of head scratching in a way because this thing is no longer niche, but at the same time, have people actually played it?
Right, or have they just watched a 6 hour video essay about it?
Right.
And or
And I'm not criticizing people or claiming that they're, you know, parroting someone else's opinions or whatever. It's
right.
just curious because how do you define niche if it's something everyone's aware of, even if they don't have first-hand experience?
Right,
And
right.
if it's something that is informing what people create, like to give another example, there was the PlayStation. quote unquote RPG Moon. That was recently localized for the first time after 20 something years. And that's a game that has been very influential on a lot of indies who never actually played it. Like Toby Fox, creator of Undertale, says it's one of his favorite games ever, but it's a game he read about, not a game he played. And he
Right,
even
right.
did an
Because
interview with the creator of that game talking about how much he loved it, how much it informed Undertale, and how he'd yet to play it.
right,
So,
just the platonic idea of Moon. um,
yeah, right. It's an RPG, but it's not an RPG.
right, right,
You
and that's
don't have to kill everything, And
and
just that little spark has, spread all over the place, including within Nintendo, because basically everyone who created that game ended up getting a gig working for Nintendo in some capacity.
yeah, that's. I think that's another thing that gets lost often in games in general is kind of like following. Aside from like your a couple of tentpole auteurs or whatever, following creatives from one game to another, especially if they're not directors.
Yeah, exactly.
People
And
people lose track of
that's
them
one of
often.
my yeah, and that's one of my little hobbies, just keeping track of where all these people are, just for my own interest, but also because there are a million different ways to triangulate on the kind of things you enjoy, and that seems to be one of the I wouldn't say one of the methods that is most immune to marketing and hype, because how many games have you seen from the creator of blank with
Right.
10 million caveats? But at the same time, if you want a game like the ones you've played before, it's easier just to find those people and track what they do. And of course, the other side of that coin is to not, how should I put it, to not pin all your hopes and dreams on that one person because they made something you liked,
Right. Right. It's
20 years ago or whatever. Odds are the thing they make may entertain you, or it may be completely different to what you want, or it might just not live up to expectations for whatever reason. But, you know, people are not AI as much as certain tech bros would like them to be. They produce work and you either enjoy it or you don't. It relates to you or it doesn't.
right. Right. And then there's it's hard to know necessarily like what piece of work or how a person's influence touches on a certain project or not. Like because we don't have the kind of same fastidious sort of attention to individual members of a team or like individual and also games have changed so drastically like because they what's the word they elevate the technology like so rapidly changed from generation to
Right.
generation. I've thought about like how somebody could uh, start on very low tech stuff and then find themselves in this PS5 generation having slowly made a game or two for each generation, and that's kind of like a weird thing of like the technology just changes the scale as you go along. It's very weird, but
Right, of course. The conditions in which games are made, the technology that's used, the scope that is expected, but also what's possible just from a single person, everything is completely changed. So the idea that someone has been making games for all that time is going to continue making the same games in the same way is a little bit misguided. But at the
right,
same
right,
time, it is also fun to see those developers who have stuck it out and have stayed the course and tried to do things their way the entire time and observe what has changed and what hasn't. To give one example, there's a guy whose work I've been delving into recently. I forget his full name because he used a pen name, but he goes by Pure Software, and he's been making strategy games, very influential strategy games, since the old Japanese computer days, early 80s. His most famous one was called First Queen, and it's gone on to influence Shining Force and a bunch of other games that people might know. But he's in his late 70s now, and he's still coding basically solo. He put a game out on the Switch about 6 months ago, and he just sits in his little apartment coding out apps, and he's just kept at it this entire time, and somehow managed to eke out a living doing it. And when you look at his games, you can see, okay, yeah, this is definitely a solo dev who's been doing it for 40 years or whatever. But
right.
it's amazing how just, I don't even know how I'd put it, just the wherewithal to stick with it, because it would be so easy to get disillusioned by not just the process for making games, but the market and everything else that comes with it. So whenever I find anyone that stayed the course and has kept, whatever sort of personal touches they've been able to cultivate and maintain over all this time, I'm always, I don't know if impressed is the word, because that's a bit, I don't know, egotistical, but it makes me happy. Put it that way.
Yeah, right. It feels like a slice of like a whole different world of game development than like what you see if you spend a lot of time just like in the zeitgeist or in online generally. It's a whole like
Right.
somebody we've talked about on the show in the last few weeks, like spiderweb software is kind of in that same milieu of just been doing that what they do since like the early 90s, and you
Right.
just
And I'm always entertained when they put out, fairly regular blog posts outlining precisely what it takes to work in the manner they work. And one of the constant quote unquote advice or pieces of advice that they're given is, change your art style, do this, be more commercial. And no matter how many times they lay out, well, first of all, why they can't, but also why they don't want to, somehow they're always hit with people who seem to know better. And yet, they've been trucking for however long. And these other people, I wonder how much longevity they might have, if at all.
right. Or there's like I feel like the game industry is a bad space for like longevity generally. It
Yeah.
feels like there's a lot of like one game studios that are just like in and out, and they sometimes they do like their release to some high amounts of acclaim, and then it just kind of they don't have the runway to make a second one because you have to make a new thing, or you have to spend the next five. The first game took 7 years. Do you have another 7 years to make something?
Right. And of course, there's also the realistic, or the reality, I should say, that
Yeah.
that a lot of studios exist in name only. Like if
Right.
you look at all the studios bought by EA or Activision or whatever, like is BioWare really BioWare? Is Raven Software really Raven Software? We just
Right.
saw Toys for Bob, who made Star Control way back in the day. They got bought by Activision, and well, they got turned into a Skylander studio and then a Call of Duty studio. And it just came out that they were able to buy back their independence. But how many are so fortunate? If they didn't have a decade's worth of Skylander money in the vault, they'd be as dead as all the other studios that have been purchased.
Yeah, that's it is like a weird thing to like find your like niche of like this kind of side project that like makes money, and then like retreating
Right.
away to, oh, we can just make, because the technology, I think, is this game technology has kind of been like people are aware of this increasingly, like the enemy of sustainability, of making sure all games look ultra perfect. Make sure every single rock is fully textured. Um, it takes a long time to make that kind of thing, and
Yeah, exactly. And of course, some people would suggest they have the answer to that question, which is, generative AI and asset store abuse, and, you know, or if you have the resources, just shipping all your work out to some country with labor laws that allow you to put 10,000 people on a project.
yeah,
But what I am happy about is seeing the emergence of, not just, there are the people coming up in this generation who've seen very starkly what the industry is and what it isn't. And I can see them formulating new sustainable ways to develop. And you're a part of that, by the way, because having these, grassroots outlets that can justify you putting a small amount of time into a small project
right.
and expecting at least some return, there's not enough of that. And I think in time, if not with this drive, which I didn't get to watch,
Yeah, yeah.
but
No, it
I
was.
get the impression.
Well, I accidentally, or did not realize. I realized like 6 hours in that I was doing it during, let's just say, a global strike. I was like, whoops.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I was like, I did
Well,
not.
if it makes you feel any better, I was also not aware there was a global strike going on. So,
Me either. Like I realized I was going to post the promo stuff. I'm like, there's a lot of people marching in. What's going on right now? It's like, oh, there's a global strike, um, and support for a ceasefire in Palestine, and just generally, hey, what if we didn't have some? What if we just stopped all that? And I was like, oh shit, oops, I shouldn't be doing this. Not because I would, Anyway, that's beside the point. I might do it again next week or next Saturday, as a pledge drive at the end of the back half. Because listen, I'm not crossing a picket line to fucking
right.
Indiepocalypse. It's not. This
Yeah.
thing's not worth it. But yes, no. The second our next guest on this show is very similar of the thing is I'm just trying to rip off what other industries are doing and looking for that sustainable DIY mid ground space.
Right. Well, I always liken it to the music industry, and I think of it as like demo deals
Yeah.
or studios that are set up specifically to record that experience. And you can look at it as, well, I won't say what I was going to say because it sounds derogatory, but yeah, there should be a space for these, you know, lower intensity and lower expectation projects that aren't dismissed as, frivolous or wasting time or whatever. And they can really give you a leg up, but at the same time, you're not, writing all your hopes and dreams on them.
Right. Right. There's
Because I'm sure there are people who've worked with you and whatever royalties they've gotten have helped them, update their dev software or get a Steam account or whatever, submit a game to Steam. And I have been, as people might look at what you do as dismiss it as small time or something, which I would never do.
Yeah, it is. It is in its own way very
I
small
don't know
time.
why anyone would criticize it.
Yeah, but there it is like a
it
game. The game space is just very weird. Um, it feels extremely top heavy, and there's I saw another thing I saw online was people talking about like the failure to recognize Death Stranding coming back in a real way. Uh, and like so I saw one of the things I saw when I was posting one of my pledge drive things was the people's games as a medium is so shallow more or less that of course they will never recognize the cultural impact or the cultural influences of Death Stranding's kind of uh, cross country delivery things that is of I forget the word of the people who that clearly Kojima took that inspiration from, but games are kind of trying to escape I think commercialism the best they can, hopefully.
Well, to that point, I would say that I was pleasantly surprised by how, I don't want to say non-controversial because I don't know what sort of controversy there would even be to be
Right.
had, but Death Stranding went over a lot better than I would have expected.
Right.
Because with, even given that Kojima's a, quote unquote auteur, and that his games have always challenged the mainstream to some extent, you would think that a game like Death Stranding would be just far enough afield that fewer people would have taken to it. So
Yeah.
I, it is heartening to me to some extent that, you know, it did find an audience and that it wasn't just people following a name.
Right.
But
And
at the same extent, you have to wonder what it is that people are taking away from it.
right. Right. Is it just like here's a dash of Kojima, quote unquote wackiness, inside of an unfamiliar shell, or because it is like in other mediums we have there is like a broad canon of what you would call weird work.
Mm-hmm.
That is like
And
far from the kind of pop culture sort of stuff. that.
Right. And specifically in games, it's been interesting watching that now that you've got a generation of, well, creators, I
Yeah.
should say, but some of them seem a little bit more cynically motivated than you would ascribe to the term creator. But you look at the audience of people who've grown up with these quote unquote weird Japanese developers. There's Kojima, but who else? Suda51 and all those sorts of characters. And then you see them making games now, and you can precisely tell who is imitating who. And
Yes.
then you've got this sort of cargo cult of people who think they're making a Suda game, or people who think they're making, I don't know, a Swery game or a Yoko Taro game or whatever. And when the imitation starts to go so many levels deep, it kind of it makes you question the original work if you're as cynical as I am. But
Yeah.
it also makes you wonder, how long can this keep going on? Are we going to keep seeing the same regurgitations of the same few themes over and over? I mean, I suppose in a very literal sense they are getting weirder, but what do they have to say?
Right. That's the thing. It's I think about it's uh, Lynchian just mean people are a little weird and rooms look kind of weird. Is you're right? Is that the end
Right, yeah.
of his goal with filmmaking, or is there something else? Like I think what you said, people are shaving off the surface level, and then when people shave off that surface level, at what point have you shaved off everything and nothing remains?
Well, at least people are still saying Lynchian and not, Alan Wake Tuian or whatever. Not
Right.
that I dislike that game, but yeah,
Remedian.
Remedian. Yeah, I don't
Remedian.
know.
Yes, that's
Um,
the proper way to say it. But yeah, no, it is like the weird thing of taking influences from someone who clearly has a wide myriad of influences, and taking them as a singular influence is a strange thing that comes up sometimes. Because you've got someone who's like very clearly
Indeed. And now we're seeing it in a very corporate way with things like the Silent Hill 2 remake, or,
right.
geez, what else is coming?
Oh,
Or
I don't want to talk about it.
if you wanted to be extremely uncharitable, you could talk about, I don't know, every game Suda's made in the last 15 years, but I digress.
Yeah, that even they're right. Even people themselves, it's the classic. You got money and you sold out. You lost that edge. You lost it's a later album output that's not as impressive because you've got too much freedom.
Yeah. Or sometimes something becomes a hit and you kind of, well, everyone sort of guesses at why it found a wide audience and no one can quite figure it out.
Yeah.
So you get people coming at it from all these different directions that never quite land on what it was that made the original so compelling. But
which is usually that it was an original.
yeah.
So making another one of them becomes
it's a lot
difficult.
easier to make things when no one's watching.
Right. Right. And people, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I had nothing to say. I was just running my mouth probably.
Oh yeah, I'm a bit like that this morning myself too, a bit over caffeinated, so excuse my bumbling.
No, I'm the inverse, where I think I'm a little sick, but I mean, I know I am.
Oh jeez.
But not too bad. Hey, it's the first time I've been sick in like 4 years almost, or like third time.
Oh geez, so you
I had
you dodged.
Oh no, I got the
COVID
corona
then?
a couple times.
Oh yeah.
The life of working within the
Twice,
service
3 times,
industry.
I think myself. Yeah. Oh jeez. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I had a quote unquote work at home job that was about a block away from my house that had absolutely no hesitation about calling me in for anything or everything. So
Oh, I see. I was a quote unquote essential worker. So I had the pleasure of, all those people were really going, "Thank you, essential workers." And I'm like, well, I guess, why don't you just give me money or whatever instead of thanking me on a podcast? Anyway. Oh, we are actually, look at that. I said in the pre-show, but this time sure does fly through this whole thing. Believe it or not, we are at the end of our segment here, but I have 2 crucially important questions for you that I ask every one of these First
and
off,
I
uh,
overtalk. So sorry. All right, I'll try to
what's your
give
favorite type of
succinct
rock?
answers.
What's your favorite type of rock? Hello? Oh.
Uh, uh, you just dropped out. I heard
Oh, what is your favorite type of rock?
rock.
Yes, rock.
Hello,
Hello, yes.
am I there?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello.
Hello. Uh-oh. I think
I
we've
can hear you. You asked about my
Yes, I did.
favorite kind of rock, I
Yes,
believe.
I did. I did. That's the question I need answered.
Hello,
Hello. Yes.
hello.
Hello. I can hear you. We are bouncing back and forth.
Okay,
Yes, hello.
you're cutting in and out, but I'll answer the question. Oh, shit, sorry. All right, and if you hear me, ooh, microphone fell over. Give me 5 seconds. Hello, sorry about that. All right,
Whoa.
rock.
Okay.
My
Yes.
favorite kind of rock. Favorite kind of rock. I'll answer
Yes.
the question in the no. Just yeah, yes. I'll say my favorite kind of. I'll give
Oh no, your audio has become
the
very.
obnoxious answer is
You're,
DB.
okay.
It is a subgenre of hardcore punk by bands that specifically emulate the drum beat. Yes, Judge. And that's my obnoxious answer. An entire subgenre of bands that just imitate this one stuff on end from bands all over the world and never get tired of it.
Oh, beautiful. I think I got your audio got very cursed there for a second, where you were like talking over yourself.
Oh,
I think it was very bizarre, but I got it in the end.
oh, geez. So it made my
But you're good. It
okay,
sounds
it
like
made my obnoxious answer even harder to listen to. I'm sorry.
yes. No, it was very. I was trying to parse what happened. It was very difficult, but it worked. No, we are here for
Oh,
obnoxious
you were cutting
answers,
in and out
especially
too.
the follow up answer. The second, or not follow up answer, follow up question. The second eternal Indiepocalypse question. What's your favorite? And this is optional, of course. What is your favorite Toho character?
Uh, hmm. I'll say Cerno because I'm basic and because, for as much as I've played some of these games, the characters have kind of bounced off my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll say Cerno and I'll say the creator themselves because the way they've handled themselves and the influence they've had on the industry is just admirable to this day. Even
Yes.
if the last 5 games they've made haven't been very good, like it doesn't matter. It's
Right.
immaterial to me.
Right. Well, I mean, in the course of the last 5 games, how many Toho fan games have been made that are exceptional? That's
Right,
a
yeah. And of course, he's been making a game more or less every year for 20 plus years. So at some
yes.
point, you expect the well to run a little bit dry.
Right. Right. Talk about if you Google his pictures. He's got a big, huge mug of beer. Seems like he's having a good time and living life. So
Yeah, I
good.
can't hate him.
Yeah. Well, we are going on break. We'll be back in roughly 2 minutes, 18 seconds. GK, thank you for joining me here today. Glad to
All
have
right,
you.
thank
Hope
you.
hope you can find yourself resituated and come back for the group segment at the end. Um, but
I will
until
do
then,
my best. I'm going to have to put some things on the charger in the interim, but yes, I'll do my best.
goodbye for now. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Jordan Mason and the Horse Museum with Avalanches. We are here with our second guest. I teased that guest would be not from the world of games at all. Our next guest is that uh, from I was like it's Club Zine, right?
Clubs in, yes.
Club Zine. Anna from Club Zine. Hello. Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
I am Anna.
If people are unfamiliar, what is Clubzin?
So Clubsin is one person publishing house
Yes.
now. Before it was just I started this project as an comic and illustration anthology, but I guess after a while it just expanded into comics in general. So I published one-person books as well. So it's not only just clubs in the anthology now. Yeah, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I was organized. I think I was either doing this show or organizing a show, and I had one of those like the recent batch of like single comics in my hand. I was like, oh, there's an email in the back of this. I should I should contact that email to see if they'd want to be on because
Oh, that's so interesting. That's
I'm a
how you found it.
I'm a big fan of comics and Indiepocalypse in general. It's just me ripping off independent comic publishing and being like, anthologies are a smart idea. Uh, why don't I do that? But that is so so
You're doing anthologies, right? The
yeah.
batches of indie. That's the same thing,
Yeah, right.
basically.
I just I my contract I use for Indiepocalypse is literally just an indie comic anthology contract that I slightly modified the words to be about games.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
It is.
It's interesting. When I got your email, I researched you a little bit and I was like, oh, that's literally the same thing, but different industry, I guess.
Yeah, I did something 2 years ago ish. I don't want to look up how long it's been because I feel like it's even longer than that. Um, with Koosh, you're familiar with Koosh.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I did a collaboration with them where we paired together comic artists that they provide and game developers I provide, and we kind of smashed them together and made 4 brand new games out of that.
Oh, wow. I need to know about that.
Yes,
I
yes,
didn't know that they had like a game thing.
yeah. No, I and the fun thing was like when I was organizing it, all the comic artists were like, Koosh for people who don't know, they skew very like their focus was originally like, here's the Latvian comic scene, but even when they expanded, they still have a large focus on like very alternative works. Um, So a lot of the artists were like, I don't play games and all. And I was like, great. That's actually what I'm looking for. Uh,
Hmm.
it provides like a
I
very
think
different
it's nice to
perspective.
have influences from like different spaces. So
Yes.
before you were talking about niches,
Yeah.
and it's interesting for me because what consists a niche for one person could be very mainstream for another.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. That is like there's your classic like if you're like one layer deep in like music or something of things that seem like, oh well, these are the obvious indie music choices would be niche to someone who only listens to the radio. But
hmm,
but
definitely.
but like, oh no, super obvious if you're too deep in, like you can always find a deeper niche or a different niche. It's an interesting thing to approach. But I'm wondering, you say you started as just an thought, like what started you? This is the thing I'm curious whenever I have other self-publishers, small press, whatever you refer to yourself on thing, what made you start?
So actually, I think I had a very easy start. So you said before that Kush is well Latvian, so they
Yeah.
try to rep Latvian artists first. And so I'm from Poland originally, and I just found myself in a group of artists from Poland, and I thought, oh, all those artists are my friends.
Yeah.
And it was very easy for me to like amass a group of people who were ready to do something for me, even though I haven't published anything before. And they were very open to this idea of an anthology. And they're already like established artists. So it was really easy for me to email anyone that I just liked at the time and be like, oh yeah, see in this project there are these people involved already. So are you interested in doing something together? And I think everyone that I asked to draw something for the first club replied that yes, they will do that. So it was very overwhelming but very nice.
And then at some point you decide I just won't stop. I just keep doing it.
Oh yeah, that I think from the very beginning it was supposed to be like just one anthology a year. So I never had in mind that I will stop.
Right, right. Because when you pay something out once a year, it's like, well, how many years are there really? I could do something 50, 60, 70 times. That's not that many times to do.
Yeah, I mean, an anthology is never the same. Like the
Yeah.
idea, my part is always very easy to do. It's so simple. It's just the people that make it different. So it will always be something new, and I don't have to revise the idea every year.
Right, right. You just need to be like, I am publishing comics again. Hello. Would you like to
Yeah,
would you like to provide some? And there is
yeah. Like
oh,
I think
I,
we were
I
also talking about earlier, the low intensity and low return,
yeah,
like projects. I think a kind of club is a little bit like that. I do want to do like more intense projects and so on, but I think for people who just want to have something published and like just want maybe to start doing comics or like a longer version, because
yeah.
it's difficult to start. You cannot write a comic that's 200 pages from the get-go. It's just
Right.
not going to be good writing. I mean, it can happen, but it's difficult to do that.
Right. And
So
usually
I
you're
think
probably
if
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You should start small. And I
Right.
think it's nice to have this something that keeps you going. So when you have something published already, um, you kind of get the incentive. Oh, it wasn't that hard. I can do it again. I can do it by myself. Like
Yeah.
you don't need a publisher. So
And
I'm just a publisher, but I don't. It's really self-publishing. So
yeah, and for so many people also like that first like, oh, I got paid for my work by a stranger.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It makes like a
That is definitely.
it's like, oh, it makes such a big difference, and it can be like so like foundational, like, oh, I could just do this even if it's not like a lot of money forever, it's still a fun, cool thing. uh I was looking through your Instagram, like, oh, look at this. I was like, I recognized a piece of art because I Nama or 899, however they go by online. Like they did a cover for Indiepocalypse. Uh,
Oh, really?
yes,
Oh,
and
yeah. It's interesting that things intersect.
yes, yeah, and there's like, I mean, I also poach a lot of like alternative comics people to do covers. Um, because I am very much like I try. It is because the covers are explicitly like non-game developers to
Mm,
try
mm,
and
mm.
make things feel less insular, so it's not all the same five people getting jobs all the time. But
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah, this is. I'm looking at the table. It's a very good kind of thing because yeah, in comic shows, like how many sort of local comic shows are around you? I'm used to. The U.S. has like I mean, it's across the U.S., which is a big country, but there's quite a few of them.
Um, so when it comes to just indie comics, I
Yeah,
think it's easy to travel in Europe, so
yeah,
obviously, and nothing's really a border. So you can find some in Poland. I don't think there's a lot of like just indie ones. There are some, but I think also Poland has a bit of a different type of comic than what would you call an indie comic worldwide.
right.
So it's hard to compare those two. Now, right now, I'm living in Japan, so the indie scene here is also very interesting and very
Right.
different.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a thing I'm interested, as whenever the big comics countries, I'm always interested in like what their indie, especially when they're like languages I can't speak, what their indie scenes are like, because I can't read what their indie scenes produce. They're harder to find.
yeah, I mean, I think in Japan, the difference between mainstream comics and self-publish, uh, I think in other countries there's more incentive for people to try self-publishing.
Yeah.
While in Japan, I think the consensus is that you want to go mainstream. Um, at least that's my impression for now.
Right.
That the goal is always to go mainstream. For me, I don't think that. But I understand obviously for the artist that this is just like the way to earn money. So like
Yes. Right.
another thing is between thinking about this if you wanna do your own projects, there is kind of a barrier between that, because obviously either comics or comic like books or game developing, all of those things are industries, so it doesn't always pay well to do art the way that you want it to, and sometimes you are forced to like compromise on your vision,
Yeah.
which is obvious. Like
Right.
it's not anyone's fault, so
There's
I understand that. Yeah,
there's like
it's
the
difficult
rush
to talk about which is better.
right, there's the rush among, like, I don't know if it's still there, but I feel like there was for a while, like, Western English language comic was like, I hope you're making a young adult comic because that's where like the money is and that's where you get paid, making YA graphic novels or
Huh.
whatever. So you found a lot of people like pivoting towards making YA stuff because they would give you money to do that, even if it's like,
Hmm.
it's the interesting thing of, it's like not something you don't want to do, but it's like fitting what you want to do into a mold that you wouldn't necessarily do on your own, if that makes sense.
I mean, trending topics and what's popular right now
Yeah.
are not necessarily bad things, but it is difficult to focus on what exactly you want to do and not take into account what sells, because of course, like, I don't get a lot of money from my projects. I do
Right.
them almost for free. Most of the I do Kickstarter, so like crowdfunding, but most of the money that I get is for the artists, so like printing the books and sending the books, like shipping and stuff. So I don't really make a lot of money out of
Yeah,
it.
no, that is,
None.
I think the eternal plight of the self pub or the indie publisher is like, well, I hope you enjoy doing it for the sake
Yeah,
of
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it.
You have to enjoy it. That's for sure. Like,
Right.
and I think it's a good return. I can look at the books and be very happy that they exist.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not struggling. That's another thing. I'm not struggling financially.
Right.
So I can do it in my free time.
Yeah.
But
No.
I understand for people that actually need the money, like this is not a choice that they can make. So
Right. So you can help provide, like, it's the same, like, Indiepocalypse is born of me spending a long time paying off all my debt. um,
yeah.
and then I'm like, oh, I
As long as
have.
you're happy.
Right. And it's like, now I have an extra $500 a month or whatever. What if I started publishing indie games? Um, and that's that kind of thing of like, it's not like you got like big publisher money, but when you have enough to help people, you know, publish something so they can have like a publishing credit or like,
Yeah, it
it,
does help. And just generally, I know that people get inspired when they see something because it's closer to what they want to do in the future with their own projects and so on. So
right.
I like, since I started doing club, there are some other anthologies popping out in Poland, and I feel so proud to see them. And it's not like I made them, but I
Right.
feel like sometimes I hear like, oh yeah, I saw that you do it, so I thought maybe I can do it as well, and that's really inspiring.
Yeah, that is, you'd be surprised like how much it is like, oh, you can do this. Somebody being like, yeah, you can't just do something. Like, nobody is inherently stopping you from
Hmm.
publishing, but it can feel like daunting, especially in, if you're alone on the internet. It feels like you have to just be, hit big, and that's the only way to,
Yeah,
do
that's
anything.
the low intensity, low return. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Oh
I
yes.
think you should start like not try too hard, because if you had too big of an idea, it just becomes very like it's too much. It's
Yeah.
too stressful. So it's better to just like have a little project in mind, something that you can do, and it's gonna be good. It's not gonna be like amazing, fantastic, but the way if you there's not a lot really good things out there anyway. So you can really start small
Yeah.
and make it amazing by doing it good. Well,
It's easy to underestimate how much people just enjoy good art. Not like, not everyone is seeking, I need to find the best piece of art ever made every day. Like, just good is good. Good is still good.
yeah. It's just for enjoyment.
Yeah,
It's you enjoy it, someone will for sure enjoy it as well. So
right.
it doesn't have to be very complicated.
And you never know like who is gonna be like. It's gonna be like, oh wow, this is exactly the thing I'm looking for. Like you never know when your thing is gonna hit like super hard with like one or two people, and like
Yeah.
there's so much space for, uh, and I think the thing I tell people is hey, it'll pay off in like 10 years. it'll the art will persevere if you if you make
I mean, yeah, if you make something that's very simple but it's good, it will
yeah
always be good. You don't have to. That's why you don't have to go for trends and stuff. What's popular now? Although the
yeah
things that are popular now and are trending are are like good anyway. Like there's nothing inherently bad about trends. So
the kind of uh, what's it whether or not it is popular, whether or not it is um, whether or not it really takes off is sort of arbitrary to whether it's good or not. As it turns out, like getting 80,000 likes or whatever on Instagram doesn't make a piece of art better. Weirdly enough.
yeah, well, that's another discourse between art being an industry, kinda, because in
Yeah.
the age of social media, like if you are popular, this just is money. So a lot of people see it and think, oh, this is what success looks like. This is
Yeah.
what successful art is. But that's not what it is.
No, I was talking to a friend earlier on the earlier stream, and she was doing an event later, and she's like, "I need to brush up on what is popular anime." So because that part of at least North
I mean,
American
popular stuff
conventions.
can be awesome as well. So it's
Yeah,
not like the only things that are popular and just things that are, there are good things out there.
yeah. Listen, I like. I like plenty of like super popular things. It's like having a broad palette is how I've approached it recently. Like
Hmm, I think so.
feeling that you like things because you like things, not because you're like trying to keep up with the culture, so to speak. Uh, and you have like like, oh, I want to try this thing and that thing and all these different things, and uh, you know, uh, different people have a wide variety of different things that they like. Uh,
Yes,
is,
and
is
that's what makes it amazing.
yeah, that's what makes you kind of talking early to that first segment of it's very clear what this person likes, so to speak, and it is, but also it's very clear that this person likes a bunch of different things. I think is more interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For sure, like with imitation in general.
Yeah,
So you were talking before, like the next person is so inspired by a game that they want to make next Suikoden. But I think it's not bad to imitate because this is like the first tool to learn what
right,
you enjoy. So it's only flattery, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, it is a little bit um, like difficult to think about it in a sense that whether maybe the imitator is more successfully financially more successful than the first person that did that. But it's like it's generally I would say imitation is a good thing. So
right, and especially if you can like if you see yourself within like the imitation, I think is the thing that always sticks by me is when I see, oh, this is someone doing this style, but very clearly they're bringing their own uh, like voice and experiences and like perspective to it.
mm, I mean, obviously, the themes or like the ideas are never extremely new. So
Right.
it's always redoing the same things over and over, just slightly changing something. And yeah, as like this is just like evolution. So
Yeah. We only have, how many experiences can humans have? We only have so many of them available to us in the broadest sense.
yeah. sometimes even the smallest details or the details exactly is what makes it so interesting or like
Yeah.
special. So it doesn't really have to be anything completely new.
Right. It has. I'm looking through a bunch of people's work, and there's like you see like the influences, but then you also see like, oh no, this is very distinctly their own work at the same time. You know, we cannot erase the art that exists in our head
Mm.
already. We cannot.
Yeah, with Club, I always try to get a bunch of people that have that, for me, that they have their own thing or like their own way of saying things or showing things, or just like art style in general. So I always want to look for that interesting little detail.
Yeah,
So
that
everyone has something.
when I like I have open submissions, and like kind of like the worst thing I can say often when I have one is like I don't feel like a person made this. It feels like a collection of ideas of what someone thinks makes a good game, and
Mm.
but it doesn't feel like a thing somebody wanted to make, which is a very which is probably the meanest way to say it. Um, but
Yeah,
but
but
it but
I get it. I
yeah,
understand that.
it is
I
like
think with like mainstream manga, I read a lot of comics,
yeah.
a lot of comics.
Oh no, I am.
And
I have. What's my comic count currently? It's very high. Uh, then that is not even read. There's like my owned account is extremely. We're sitting at 2834. Uh, plus like 155 things I classify as zines.
mm,
So
I
yeah,
mean, so
I'm
it's yeah, generally just reading through so much stuff. At some point, you realize you're reading the same thing over and over again,
right,
which
right.
is again not bad because sometimes there's this one detail that changes everything. But after a while, I get into this kind of like I know what the character is or what they are supposed to be
Yes.
already by such small like indications that I don't really have to read through the comic. And sometimes I catch myself that I no, like you actually have to read it because otherwise you will not catch the detail. You would just have the vague idea what it is, but not understand what makes it good or better or just
Right.
not good.
Especially if you, especially like the unique. I guess it's semi-unique style of like manga of publishing. The magazine style of publishing, where you've got these themed collections that where the works are inherently like published and edited to be somewhat similar because
Mm,
they're all meant
I
to go
mean, when it
together.
comes to group, I don't really edit anything.
Right. Right.
So,
Oh no! So no,
but
I was talking about like reading manga magazines.
or like oh yeah, like Shonen Jump or
Yeah.
something.
Right.
I mean, they do publish the things that are popular in this. Well, it's groups of people, I
Yeah.
guess. Like there's
Like their
an ideal
demographics.
customer of the magazine. So I guess what they choose are those things that are popular. So yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I feel like it, but no, no, yeah, no clue. I mean, that's the benefit of being indie is you like I just do whatever I want, and I kind of you just kind of publish whatever you want, and kind of with the skew towards looking for independent work. Um,
Mm. Yeah, I
uh,
mean, it's right now I don't really know what independent means anymore. Like,
right,
'cause before I think it was easier to like. I mean, of course, independent. Like, still there are people drawing, so that's maybe um still like everyone is independent if they are an artist. But just generally, I think the idea of style and type of story, maybe the line between what's mainstream and what is indie are blurring now because so many stories are available online. You can find almost anything.
right,
So it's I think now the mainstream is so influenced by the indie side of things that I mean, of course, like, okay, this maybe is not exactly true what I'm saying, but I think the influences are stronger than
Yeah.
what they were before.
And we're in a situation where anything can like blow up on Twitter one day,
Yeah,
and go from independent to like mainstream, and then what? Is it no longer independent if it's one person, but they have like 2 million Twitter followers or whatever?
mm,
But it's still a singular person publishing their work. It's a very strange space where we can now bypass the traditional publishing model with like direct publishing.
yeah, that is true. Although I maybe this is a little bit of a skew of this,
Yeah,
but I've been um listening to some YouTube video essays about between Anthony Fontana and then FD Signifier. I don't know if you know them,
I know the
but
first. The
there was
second is unfamiliar.
uh, there was discourse about an idea how inherently um oh my god, maybe this is too much.
No, no, go ahead.
Topic about white rappers and how that is problematic in itself generally.
You're right.
And how now the indie has more like there's a possibility of something blowing up online, people listening to whatever artist they want, but still the industry does choose which artists are like not only popular on Twitter, but are actually featured further in mainstream media, as in like maybe like company deals and so on.
Right,
So I
right,
think when it comes to artists, comics, I don't know, comics are not very mainstream in general, but I think
right,
like games are like there is a possibility of people going like super extra rich and super extra famous over being involved with games. So it's yeah, maybe that's a bit too much.
No, no, it is right. It
I
is.
was
It's
just
a
thinking like how the industry is still an industry. So even though there are possibilities of like individuals making it big, it's still limited by the industry. So
right, right. The industry comes for everybody eventually. uh,
yeah,
it's hard to avoid it, especially if you're like, oh well, because the call is so obvious. Because like, oh, I can survive and make money off of this.
yeah.
And that is
Mm.
that is extreme. That is always very alluring. The idea of like, oh, I don't have to work at a job I don't like anymore. I can make art, and it is the endless pull. But we are, Anna. Would you believe it? At this time,
Yeah, I
I
think
think
we're
technically we went
over.
over, but I always go over. I never go under. It's
I'm so
always
sorry for the third guest.
no, no. That's fine. We're gonna keep going. We got plenty of time. But you had a little time to prep for the two questions. But now I gotta
Yes.
know, what's your favorite type of rock?
So I like all rocks. So I'm not gonna choose a favorite
Perfect.
rock.
Do you have a favorite Toho character?
And this is another wishy-washy answer because I don't know what it is. So
No, that's a common response. It's an acceptable
really?
response.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
So yeah.
it's a long running Dojin series of games since like the '90s.
Oh,
Primarily
okay.
primarily bullet hells, but it has like a very open fan game license to it, where most people could just make a Toho game if they wanted to.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing. Thank you for joining me here. Glad
Thank
to
you.
have you. Uh, we're gonna go on break soon, but we will be back in about 2 minutes and 34 seconds with our next guest. Bye for now. Wrong. We are here with our final guest, and folks, we got back in the safe, comforting embrace of Indiepocalypse. We've got a guest here from Indiepocalypse. Oh no, did I close it? Oh no, no, I did not. From Indiepocalypse 39 with wait. That's not right. Is it 49?
I think it's 49.
Yes, I was like, wait a minute, it's not 39. That's too long ago. Indiepocalypse 49, no longer the baby, the newborn baby of Indiepocalypse, since discarded as a day ago. Now the working its way to awkward middle child territory. Um, but an issue that did very well, honestly. Like I was surprised, like in over a course of a month too.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
very happy.
yes, I am too. Like I think you got payouts like every week almost, which is very
Yeah,
rare.
you know, I will say that the cover was very eye-catching, so maybe that
Yes.
could have been it.
Oh,
That was a very beautiful cover.
it is. It's truly like the cover from I believe someone I met at. Oh, let me introduce my guest first before we go to it. You may know her from issue 39, issue 49 of Indiepocalypse, working on the Good Weapon. It's Maddie Wu. Maddie, hello.
Hello.
Yes, the cover, and this is like I went to Canzine in Toronto, and I think no, I paid a lot of attention. Like I think they just liked my booth there, like on Instagram. And I was like, who's a lot of times when people like things, I will actually just go through their profile. And I was like, oh, this person's art is really cool. I should DM them and say if they want to make a cover for Indiepocalypse. And they were like, yes, I would.
Oh, they did such a good job.
Oh yeah, it's so like and like Indiepocalypse, a little bit of Indiepocalypse backstory is when I ask for a cover, I just say write the word Indiepocalypse. That's it, and then you can just do whatever you want with it.
It's nice having a free blank canvas in that sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
really like it shines because I mean, what Indiepocalypse is like cannot be defined by like imagine an artist trying to encapsulate what is in any given issue,
Yeah,
uh,
I suppose you get like a bunch of different submissions. Like, for example, the reason I heard about Indiepocalypse to
yes.
begin with was from Lily Valine when she
Okay.
submitted Toho Lonely Lovely Bonfire.
Yes. Lily
Yeah, and
actually.
so yeah, she's the creator of Boss Game, which
Yes.
is she's probably more well known for. And when I saw that, and I was like, oh wait, you can just submit games.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I've got something already made. I'll submit it and see what the general response is. And I was very happy to be chosen. Earlier when you guys were talking about you know, effort and return, I will say this, like I know my game, The Good Weapon, because I pay my artists. The
Yeah.
artists are my friends, but it doesn't matter if an artist is your friend. You always pay them the market rate or more because they're doing you a favor in that regard, right?
Yes. Yes. I.
So the Good Weapon will never make back its money.
Right.
That's guaranteed. It will never make back its money. I have made some from Itch.io, but the majority of the money that came rolling in was actually from Indiepocalypse, surprisingly. I was very surprised when
Yes.
I got paid and I saw that email. I'm like, that's a number I did not expect to see.
Oh no. Yeah. It is
Yeah.
like a common thing. Like a kind of a rite of passage within Indiepocalypse is someone on week 2 asking, "Hey, aren't we supposed to get paid every week?" And I'm like, "Hey, you and me both, brother. I wish we got paid every week." Because like the bulk of it comes through Patreon. That's really like the initial because there's like Patreon's like at 800, so like that's like a baseline of $800 every month in sales, um, which is good. And then 49 actually I can look 49 did like really well. I think it's like close to like a top runner maybe.
Okay. There were some other really good games in that
Yes.
issue as well. Yeah.
No, I
Hmm.
I think they're all great games, of course.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Oh yeah, it is. It's right behind Kush. It's within the top 10 already,
Okay.
which is a cool thing. Yeah, I am um, a big proponent of all these. I like all these games, so I just want them to do very well. Obviously, I like all these games a lot. Um, but people, let's get down to it. If people aren't familiar with the Good Weapon, what would you say it is? Like, how would you describe it?
So it's a interactive fiction. Other people's probably know it better as a visual novel.
Right.
Um, And I think the beauty of games like a visual novel is that sometimes there's choices, sometimes there's different endings, but there is something that can be done in visual novels that are very inherently game-like and very different to actually reading a book.
Yeah.
The visual novel is about three villains trapped inside a bunker, and there's an evil presence outside. And they want to get out of the bunker, they want to defeat the evil presence, but the answer is they have to nuke the entire world. And it's a dilemma that they'll have to go through, and I really hope you enjoy it. Um, but back to visual novels, I
Yes.
think that a lot of people tend to, I would say, perhaps look down on visual novels. They'll
Yes, I
go,
am. I am a big visual novel defender around these parts.
yeah,
Yeah,
so they'll say things like, why are why can't this be a movie? You're just a low budget thing.
right.
But there's a beauty to low budget things. For example, when I was going through Club Zin's Instagram earlier, and I was looking through all of the things that Anna helped publish, and I was looking at every single one of them, and I was saying, "This is beautiful. There's personality,
Yeah.
there's actual like the individuality really comes through." And I think when you have visual novels, and if you go on like Ichio and you look at all the other interactive fiction work, you'll see that everyone is always doing their best. They have trouble programming, they have trouble doing art, or they may have trouble writing. But nevertheless, they are doing their best. And in working around those constraints, you get these fantastic pieces of fiction. And you
Yes.
can't get this if you have everything. If you have everything, you won't learn how to solve like certain problems. You will if I gave you if I gave you $200 million, because it's not because $100 million somehow doesn't cut it anymore,
No, no.
right?
We,
You you
we
might you might make Horizon Zero Dawn again. I'm like, sure.
yeah.
If you
I
want to,
hear
you
you.
can go make that.
I
Yeah.
hear you need at least $4 million to make an indie game nowadays.
Yeah, so and that's because the people deserve to be paid, right? And
Yes.
and that money, you know what? I look at that money and I go, that's fine. All
Right.
those
Because
artists, all those programmers, all those narrative writers deserve to be paid.
once you start adding up comfortable salaries, that number gets very big very fast.
Yeah, and protections and pay time off and all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I do love visual novels. Like many others, I got introduced to them from a very young age, but I didn't play them. I always heard about them in the background. Like occasionally I hear something like, Tokimeki Memorial, and I'll be like, I have no idea what that is.
Right.
And it just doesn't really like register to me. They're all just things going on in the background. It wasn't until I um played Umineko. That's from Ryukishi
Yeah.
'07, I believe is
Yes.
the guy.
That
Yeah.
is.
So Umineko is probably the most well-known one, and that's because it is the most, ooh, how do I put it? It's the most egregious. That's not, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's
You're
so
right.
it's so distinctively itself, right? It's a bit like a Kojima work where, you know, he just does what he wants to do. And in Umineko, it breaks a lot of rules and it also reinforces a lot of its own personal rules. So it makes you trust it and it just drags you in despite all of its flaws. And from those flaws arise a certain type of perfection and beauty.
Yes.
And I think it's amazing.
Right. Right. I like there is. It is very much like trying to make a perfect work of art is, you're going to sand off all the edges, and the edges are like where life lives. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And nobody wants a perfect work of art, I'll be honest.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I think people, right, games, I think, run into this problem more than anything because there's the quote unquote version of a game that is perfect, um, because everything plays well or plays right, if whatever that happens to mean. um,
Yeah, and back then when, for example, when BioShock Infinite first came out, a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, this is perfect in many regards." You you look at that game now, and then few people actually talk about it,
right.
right? There's so many edges sanding down, like deaths don't matter, you just quickly respawn. Um, the plasmid effects are basically the same version, iterated over the previous games. You when you have these games with a lot of wonderful friction, like Helldivers. It intentionally tries to be mean to you. Helldivers has friendly fire. It tries to get you. It tries to make your friends kill you. It's hilarious, and all that friction, all that you reload, you don't keep your bullets. If you turn around, your gun's too heavy, so it takes a long time to actually aim back again. All that friction and imperfectness is where the fun is. And too many games try to get rid of all of that because there's a playtester who doesn't understand it, or there's you know, again, it's the playtesters or people who just look at it and go, "Oh, I only like this part. Get rid of everything else,"
Right.
without seeing it as a coherent whole.
Or there's that kind of like built in. Oh, we need to make sure the audience doesn't bounce off of XY element. We have to make sure that that it's like a weird, like it's just like a dopamine drip slowly of my numbers go up and I get all the stuff and then the game ends, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
and I did laugh a lot when people started talking like the multiple game articles that were written about God of War, where Atreus, the boy, wouldn't shut up when you were trying to do a puzzle. And it's because it's focused as so that you can't. Sony spends so much money on the game
yeah,
that they have to make you finish the game.
right.
Now, on the problem with that is people do get annoyed, and those games are designed to be watched first and foremost rather than played. I personally couldn't make it through Horizon Forbidden West because Aloy wouldn't stop talking. I felt like I wasn't playing a game. I would
Right,
enter a cave and then she'll be like, I better shoot that orange thing. I haven't even seen the orange thing.
right. You don't even know where it is.
I'm not playing a game anymore. I'm following orders. There's backseat driving. There's quarterbacking. Um, I there are a lot of games out there where they throw you into a room, right? And it's a dark room and you don't know what's going on. It's one of those like very low budget horror games, and yet it's beautiful because the exploration, the interaction, you figuring out, you wondering what's going on, the mystery, you can feel the love the developer has for you, the player, for you, for the game itself. And I
Yeah,
think that's a lot of what's been missing.
yeah. Like friction, or like more like I don't know. Antagonistic is not the right design, but or the right word, but where it is more you're having a conversation with the developer as you are playing the game, because the very specific eccentricities are coming through of like what the intention of the design is. You're not necessarily right. Games are meant to be beaten is a thing I think about a lot, like you said. uh,
Yeah, because they spend so much money on it. I
right,
don't mind if I don't beat a game. Like
right,
if I played a game and I got like 2 to 3 hours joy out of it, that's fine. That's actually just fine because I already got what I wanted out of it. I don't feel I haven't finished Baldur's Gate. I don't necessarily know if I'm gonna finish it. I
yeah,
enjoyed it, right? And it's my choice to like go, oh, you know what? I've kind of had enough.
yeah.
It's one of those things like and so people seem so afraid to like drop it. But it's okay to drop things. And you have a certain amount of time, you have places where you find your inspiration, where you find your joy, and if something's not working for you, that's okay.
Yeah, we live in a world where
Mm.
if I no longer had to work or sleep or do anything else, there's already too much art for me to experience in my lifetime. uh
Yeah, and so I would preemptively curate it in that
right.
sense.
There's like a time where it's like, oh, I can just like I have I have played enough Baldur's Gate, I have played enough BioShock, I've played enough XYZ game. I am thinking about uh I've got in my brain we were talking in the first segment about studios and people who just routinely pump out stuff, and 2024 is the day when Gale entered my brain and I started thinking about Atelier games. And am
Hmm.
I going to play all of them? Probably not. Am I going to look at them and think about them? Maybe. um,
Yeah.
but like same with like Trails games. I'm not going to play every Trails game that ever existed. Maybe, but or am I gonna play like adventure games are my favorite games to watch. uh, Someone who can beat them who is not me, and because I do have like an affection for there's very specific like 90s 2000 sometimes FMV often pre-rendered kind of dark or horror adventure game, but boy do I not want to play them very much.
Mhm.
And there is like multiple ways to interact with games and like get what you want out of them.
Yeah, I think in terms of interaction, if we go back to the topic of visual novels,
Yes.
there are, I guess there's a lot of people who also necessarily look down on them because sometimes the choices don't
Right.
matter. And I think the fact that it doesn't matter misses the point.
Yeah.
When you have a choice, you are expending you're expending your energy. You're putting your will into it. You are saying this is how I would react. It doesn't necessarily matter if the choices matter. You are, along with the developer, building a story and a personality for your character or the way you interpret the piece of work. If I took out those choices, if I took out those breakpoints where you are suddenly convinced that you must act, even the end result is that it didn't matter, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily know in that sense, right? And that energy that you put in, that thought, that's engagement, and that's engagement in the good sense. I'm not like giving you plus 10 EXP for making one choice.
Yeah.
I'm saying here's a choice, right? I want to see what you do. I don't have the statistics, but I hope that you'll love it as much as I do.
Right. Right. You are still being a participant in the. I mean, even in the clicking. To or however you choose to advance text, you are still being like a participant in the game,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
reading through a kinetic novel without any choices or branches is a very different experience than reading a book or watching a movie. Like it's they're just they're inherently different mediums, and they
Yeah, and Final Fantasy 14 actually does this to great aplomb. People are so invested in their own Warrior of Lights, that's their main character.
yes
They're so
oh
invested in Final
yeah
Fantasy 14, but not a single choice in FF14 has ever mattered.
right
But the memes, the discussions, the talk about it almost always center around those choices on how the writer decides to express your warrior lights character, right? There's funny choices, there's serious choices, there's somewhat silly, uh, quasi romantic choices, and I think that's what's needed. You take that away, and then the Final Fantasy 14 community is gonna be so angry. That's
yeah
that's where they find all their love.
right there's a lot of joy in not call them frivolous things, whatever you want to call them, not quote unquote not important segments, like not important choices, but uh, nothing is inherently sort of important. And but like it is fun because it is where like character lives. It's I've even if like I found that with like the writing I don't think is perfect or exceptional, but the joy of having like the little skits and tales series like does a lot for me, even if it's
Mm.
like not uh it's not like there's like just like people um being casual, like it's a different vibe. It creates different like stylistic approaches to things, much in the way like a Final Fantasy choice where like you're making a joke, you're picking on Alphana or whatever, and it doesn't affect how the game goes in any way. But you were there, you got to pick on him. It was your choice.
Yeah, and I think games and at least creators who are deeply confident in their own work
Yeah.
will always indulge. And Hideo Kojima indulges all the time, right?
Yes.
Everyone screams that Kojima needs an editor. Everyone screams that Kojima needs to shut the fuck up sometimes. But dude is indulging. He is in love with his own work.
Yeah.
And when you are making your own things, yeah, you should indulge, right? If you're drawing a comic and you want to do a two-page spread just focused on one particular emotion, that's your choice, right? And I'd love it if you do it, but that's your choice. Go ahead and indulge. The difference between indulgence and being up your own ass is, there's a fine line there.
Yes.
And there's the point where, people get very annoyed, but if you're not indulging, then you're not, like, you gotta love yourself at some point,
Right.
right? And when you're making art, you are saying how much you love yourself, how much this is you. You are showing the world who you are. So go ahead is generally my
Right.
my answer to these things, right?
If you're not making it for yourself, then who are you making it for?
Yeah, and the answer is obviously, we spent 200 million in this job and into this project, and now we have to make people finish it.
Yeah.
My partner works in game dev, and she's been on quite a fair amount of big projects. And in every single case, when the passion dries up, when things go awry, it's because nobody on top knows what they're doing. Nobody on top has a coherent vision. The game designers, the project managers, they are given this project by CEOs who mandate a certain goal. And
Yeah.
that goal is almost always, oh, Discord seems like $1 billion company. We're going to make our own version of Discord, but with a 3D metaverse that people can hang out in, right? Like these
Yeah.
are these are things that are not rooted in reality.
Right. They're just
But
right. How
yeah,
can we
and
make our
so
version of this thing that makes money?
yeah, and so nobody indulges and nobody has any love for the project, and they do it as a paycheck, right? And that's why you get like 300 different types of rock in your overworld when you don't when Halo 1 uses one rock reused as an asset, and they
Yeah.
just twist and turn it and make different sizes. Like, you don't need that many things, but nobody there is actually putting much thought into it because they don't care anymore.
Right. I was talking. There was it last week? I was interested to because I didn't know this. I was interested to hear that like different approaches to this. Like apparently RGG uses like they don't have they focus on like their teams are like a lot of their teams are like mechanics teams. If that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
they're focused on making systems more than they are focused on like making a part of the game, and it's kind of like a weird thing where you have these modular sort of things that plug in and out of this ecosystem, and it's I think having good scenario. I think I heard a while ago that someone was saying Nihon Falcom's thing is let's build tools and then we'll write the best scenarios in the business. Like that was their goal.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think like getting all of the busy work out of the way, or quote not busy work, but but like help you getting a clarity of vision of like we don't need to build this thing, we have the thing, we want to make the game. I think helps speed that along, so you don't have people being like, what if we make Fortnite, but our version of it. uh,
Yeah. Yeah. It's very reminiscent of startup culture when they say we'll do
right.
this, but change a little bit that. The biggest, the one of the most interesting things I've heard in game dev industry was that a good producer is probably the best thing you can have on your team.
Yeah.
And by that they mean, I mean, producers have a lot of bad rap. Producers are known in Hollywood as the person who sucks out all the money, who makes things go all wrong. Executive producers have a very different name. It's like they're put on the credits just for that reason, blah blah blah. But a producer in the game is that these people execute the vision of the designer, and they ensure that it doesn't run out of budget, and they try and make it done in as clean a way as possible. And a lot of times these budgets blow out everywhere is because there's no producer.
Yeah.
I have a friend who works in a company, and they've never had a producer, they've never had an art lead, they've never had all those important things. All they have are senior artists, junior artists, senior programmer, junior programmer, and then three different game designers, right? And it came out to be the project was canceled, but it came out to be like the interior joke was that another week would pass, and they'd be like, "Great, we're working on a game. We don't know what we're working on."
Right. That's
And
it's
yeah, like having a good producer is not only life-saving, but it's like sort of critical if you don't want to balloon a budget,
Right.
right?
It's
If you
almost
want to
weird.
actually get things done.
It's almost weird to think of like, because like producer in film is different than producer in games. Like even though they share a title, because like the inherent like disparate nature of game development, where it's not like we're coming all to the we're not all coming to the filming. We're not coming to set or location to film. It's like we're all going to our little quadrants, our little zones, and working on our parts of the game, and we don't see the larger picture often. You know,
Yeah.
and the producer is like helps you see the larger picture and helps you realize what game you're actually all making, what these rocks are for.
Yeah, and I think like for example in indie dev, like when you obviously don't have a producer,
Yeah.
it is up to you to pull back from the very beginning. And so, okay, what am I trying to accomplish and how can I actually do it? And is it necessary to have these things or that? When I was making the good weapon, I knew that as long as people got to the climactic part of the game, I had them. I had
Right.
them hook, line, and sinker. They just needed to get there, right? And the issue is that the climactic part of the game has most of the assets, and the things before it did not. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, but the thing with visual novels and the thing with me being indie and me not having any amount of authority means that people will pick up my game and they'll drop it. Like in the beginning, they'll drop it if it's not interesting enough. They'll drop it if there's no immediate drama. So I had to really quickly change the thing. Like I knew a lot of people tend to do what famous fantasy author Brandon Sanderson calls the Sanderson avalanche, which is where there's so many big twists and reveals at the end of the game or at the end of the novel that it's just overwhelming. And then
Yeah.
the first 80% of the book is just really boring drama. And you've got to change it up. You've got to have good drama and good interest throughout the entire book or throughout your entire game. So I had to change the order of revelations for certain parts. Like the characters had to constantly discover something. And I pulled them forward. And then by pulling those revelations and those twists forward, I allowed myself more time at the end to actually focus on the consequence of those twists. And that made a vastly more dramatic story at the end.
Yeah, right. And
Mm.
you need to, because when working in games, right, like you said, unless you have like the rep or the pull to get people to know, like, oh, we need to play this to the end. How do you get someone to get past the first 10 minutes? It's a trickier thing.
Yeah, and my visual novel is only 20 minutes, so like
Right.
those first 10 minutes are crucial.
Yes. Yes. See, that's that's half the game. But
Yeah.
fortunately, I think that the visual novel community is like a whole different other thing outside of games, which is like it doesn't feel like it's part of the video game industry a lot of the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't speak for other people,
Yeah.
but when I looked at visual novels, I was like, oh yeah, I can write stories. I guess I can make one. And then I was obviously wrong. I had to learn so many things, but it feels very different.
Yeah.
But I suppose the base mechanics are still there. The foundation is still there. The way you need to communicate is still there. Like these are all great things to try out. And I would highly recommend if anyone wants to go make a visual novel, just go make it. It's not that hard. Like it was, yeah, I struggled, but that's because I want to do certain silly things. It's
Yeah.
not that hard if you just want to make a visual novel. It's sincerely quite easy to publish something.
Yes. No, it is. Turns out you can just publish anything on the internet, and
Yeah.
it, and yeah, if you, I'm looking at one of the comments on your page, and there's someone's like, it feels like I read a 10-hour story in 30 minutes. I'm like, yeah, that's also the thing about length is that it inherently is not it's made up. Length of the quality being length and quality being connected in any way is made up. Uh,
Yeah, and the language of a visual novel, I find, is almost similar to movies in
yeah,
the way I mean, if you do any film literacy class, they'll tell you about, when you juxtapose images, when you do certain things and sound effects, right? And the beauty of a visual novel is that because you have every other asset under the sun. You're not just reading words. You can pull back. And by pulling back I mean that as a writer myself, I shouldn't write anything at this moment. I should let the art do its thing. I should let the music do its thing. I should let the transitions, the sound effects, all these things, pictures worth 1,000 words. These will do better than if I had decided to saturate the reader with a whole paragraph of terrible prose, right?
Right.
All this is the beauty of narrative design, and it's a skill that you do need to learn. And what better time to learn than now?
There is, for a medium that has access to not only human interaction but also video and sound. There's a lot of text in video games. I think video games need an editor at large more than we realize. I feel like so much text could just be trimmed, and
Yeah.
little of consequence would be lost. But
But surprisingly, the reason it doesn't get trimmed a lot of times is because they have to ship it. And so the writers know they should trim that, but when they wrote it, they didn't know how the gameplay was going to work out or how the directing of the scene was going to work out. So whenever I see something like that in like a AAA game, and I'm like, this is wrong. And then I think back and I go, nobody's at fault here, right? Every single section of the studio wanted to change that, but they couldn't, so they had to ship.
And it's better that it exists because you know what? I'm already
at least you can see how it works.
Right. And it's like, I've already read the line. The line is over. And I'm done with it. It's like, art isn't perfect. I'll survive if they reiterated a point a couple too many times.
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, Manny, you and I have also crossed that threshold of time. It just breezes by. But I mean, you're not going to be gone for very long. We being the third guest, your absence is the shortest. But before you go, I need to ask you a couple questions. You've had time to prepare. You are ready to go. What's your favorite type of rock?
So when you first asked that question at GSK, I had prepared an answer.
Yes.
And my answer was basically this: like all my friends, including my high school chemistry teacher, will tell you their answer is basalt. Like that's their favorite type of rock.
Yeah.
And my personal answer is my favorite type of rock is probably obsidian. But I know you're not talking about that. You're talking about music, and I was very confused.
Actually, either is acceptable.
Okay. I don't have a favorite type of genre of rock in terms of music.
That's perfect.
But I do like me a good obsidian rock.
And do you have a favorite Toho character, though?
I have very little Toho exposure, but if I had to quickly have one, it'd probably be Marisa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Featured in the aforementioned Lovely Lonely Bonfire, or Lonely Love. I forget which order they go in.
And she has a broom. That's kind of great.
Yes.
And she has a big hat. That's also kind of great.
She's a little witch and she steals stuff a lot.
Oh, yeah. Do crimes. That's also great.
Yes. It's a fun little thing. But anyway, I need to spend more time with Toho, honestly. I keep thinking about, it's a cool, I like the designs, I love the designs. There are certain works of art where just the appeal is when I like character designs. But that all said, we're going to go on break. Manny, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you.
Glad to have you in the zine on the show. We're going to be back in where we are, roughly 2 minutes and 2 seconds until. Hello, and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Oops with Slow Burn. We are back here with the whole crew, I believe. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today?
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we're all here. We're all accounted for. Yes, Stealing mentioned, says P Thief in the chat. A friend of the show. That's how you get me to shout you out in the chat, is you be friend of the show. But I'm closing tabs so we know we're wrapping down. I have this Jorishi wa nice body thing open. I gotta close it. But anyway, video games. What if they were cool? But yes, we are back with the show. Hello, everyone. GSK, Anna, Maddie Wu. We're all here. Video games. What's this show is ostensibly of video games. I guess what do you? I gotta. What do you guys? What do you all think about Mario? What's your opinion of Mario? You know, famous guy. He's got overall, red shirt, runs around sometimes. Um, Jumps on heads, I think.
I
I'm not
actually
familiar.
played a
Can
lot
you
of
give a
Mario
little more
games
info?
and all that. Sorry. Go.
No problem.
Oh, he has a brother. His brother he wears green. He's called Luigi. Famously
Oh,
portrayed.
that's the dinosaur, right?
No. Do you remember the Bob Hoskins film? The Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo two-hander back in the day. They made a movie of it.
King Lear, right?
No, not
That
that
was Bob
one.
Hoskins, I think.
I think so,
Oh.
but no. This is a different.
I'm sorry, you've lost me.
This is a more dramatic role. Yeah.
I am actually gonna say that I've never played a Mario game.
Oh, yeah.
Never in my life have I played
Interesting.
Mario. Yeah. And I always surprise people by saying this as well. I've
Yeah.
also never played a Pokemon game.
Yeah, you know, it's
Oh.
weird because I haven't played one in 10, 15 years, so I think you're probably good. uh,
I guess
I've,
because it's such a big part of the world's zeitgeist. Like,
right,
if it's about Mario, then I just absorb it via hearing it from other people.
right,
And it's very easy to hear about it. Like, there's the Mario movie. There's YouTube
yeah,
channels. Always, someone will mention Mario at some point. I'll just be
right,
like, yeah, it's the plumber that does platforming.
right.
But in terms of actually playing it, I don't think I ever had a console that could play a Mario game.
But
Right.
didn't Windows 95 have a built-in Mario game? That was the first game that I played from Mario.
Yes,
And I
that
I think
is.
remember
I
that game.
Yeah, I
You
think I
could
watched my
not
cousin play
finish
it.
it. You
Uh,
could not win that game.
I think I know the game you are talking about because I think I went to. There was a friend in like elementary school. I went to their house once. They were that kind of like friend we weren't close with, and I think they also had a PC Mario game like that. Is not like like that sort of like a semi bootleg style PC Mario game.
I think wasn't it just on the PC? No idea because I was very young, so I don't
Yeah,
remember. But I
I,
remember only maybe it was bootleg because you could not actually finish the game, which was very, very. It defined me as a person, I think.
I
I
have a
played the game all the time.
I have a similar childhood memory of a Mario game on a PC and thinking that doesn't belong there. So it might be the same thing. There may be something that I'm not aware of that I've never looked up.
Now I have to look it up. Because I know it's most of the games I guess were on consoles, but since I'm from Europe, I think it's very Eastern European thing to have everything on PC. I never
Yes.
had any console, so like PC is my only means of playing games.
Oh, you know,
So like yeah, the only.
you never had a. Oh, what was that console? It has like is like the elephant mascot. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
The Dendy, right?
The Dandy, yeah, the Dendy.
Nope, never heard of it. Don't know what.
It was it was a lot of like Russia Eastern Bloc kind of stuff. It had a Dendy, which is like a little fake, or like a pirate console kind of thing of the Famicom.
DOS clone gameplay. PC game. I'm looking at the Mario Windows. Yeah, it's like a DOS game.
Oh, okay, Mario. Yeah, that is like a very specific, like, different era of like. Okay, yes, it is in fact. I think I do know Mario DOS. I think this is what it was. I that weird looking Mario sprite and like the coloring. Mario and Luigi for the PC DOS. It could be.
I think Luigi was not featured in that game, although I love Luigi, which I think is an unpopular opinion.
John Leguizamo. I wouldn't trade him for a minute. He's a cool guy.
I don't think he's very cool now. I don't know why. I played a lot of Mario games. One of them was Mario and Luigi Partners in Time.
Yes.
And I remember Luigi was like brains of the operation there, or am I just making this up now?
I think
But
you might be
now
You could be assigning characters. I don't know. Those are
Now
mostly
and now they changed him into this stupid comic relief. I'm actually very annoyed with that.
right. It's weird how they have like, they inherently just kind of switch them into like characters for somebody that like they weren't really like they're like the broadest possible characters if for people that were just guys in different colored suits originally, but are still not like fully defined characters. It's very weird. But I guess it's a movie. Maybe they have character traits in the movie. I have not. Nor will I ever see probably that movie because I have the one I need. Call me when the Mario movie has Dennis Hopper in it.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience that the personalities in the Mario movie are Chris Pratt and Charlie Day.
Okay.
That's about as far as it goes.
Yes, that is true.
And we're talking new era, kind of current modern iteration of Chris Pratt, I assume, where he's a cool guy or whatever.
The default American
Yes,
cool
the one
guy.
that forgot how to emote.
That was
Yes,
very
that
funny.
guy.
Like as who was someone who watched Parks and Rec, kind of like as it came out, and then Chris Pratt became like a different guy. Um, it's a very strange sort of like trajectory for him as an actor in terms of like that first Jurassic Park movie came out during like the heyday of Movie Pass, I think. So I was seeing a lot of trailers for it, and I was like, this fellow does not know how to act. Why? What is going on? I'm losing my mind. But
It was also strange in the sense that everyone was watching this guy, forcefully become someone else in real time. And I think everyone's reaction was the same, but I mean, it happened.
Yeah.
I presume he's fulfilled.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm fulfilled watching his movies, but,
Maybe he's like
his
so
money, I suppose.
inoffensive. People just go to the theater anyway.
Right. We need another. We need it's our perfect inoffensive male white lead.
Yeah.
You never
Put him
know
in
when
Sonic. It's time.
you leave Sonic alone. He does not.
On the big list of narrative atrocities that Sonic has committed, I don't know where Chris Pratt would rank. Unfortunately, he might not be at the top.
No. It's like you keep. I mean, I think I think a good old Ben Schwartz is doing a fine job. I'm sure. I'm never going to see those movies, but
Not now, no.
I like that guy in general. I think he's generally enjoyable enough that I'm sure he can beat Sonic the Hedgehog.
The movies aren't that bad, surprisingly. They have their own niche. They're entertaining enough, I
Yeah,
think.
it seems like the kind of thing where it's like I think Ben Schwartz is funny. I think Jim Carrey is whatever you think about a film, he is an actor, and I feel like those movies have to be like sort of carried by. Blockbuster movies have to be kind of carried by the actors in a lot of ways.
I will give him this credit. He is someone who understands that when you're in a movie standing next to CG characters, you kind of have to fill in the blanks where the computer generated characters cannot. And if you were going to get someone who is very good at filling empty space, I suppose that is a talent of Jim Carrey's.
Yeah.
I think movies that are made based on games are just an amazing idea. One of my favorite movies was Mortal Kombat from like 95 or something. I think it's genius.
I had the VHS of Mortal Kombat and I watched it so much. I loved it.
I only ever saw the second one like on TV. I think it aired on like it was like a TV, whatever. I don't know what your TBS equivalent is, but it aired on TBS a lot. The kind of channel that just airs movies during the day when you're sick. I remember Johnny Cage kicked the guy in the chest and then he got his neck broken. I think of that a lot.
Amazing,
Maybe I saw
amazing,
it too
just iconic movie.
It is like
Love
Whenever I go to
the
my go
what's
ahead.
the name? Not CGI, but like how did they even do those things?
it's
Was it painted?
yeah, it's just probably practical effects. Just maybe with a little computer generation in them, but like
Beautiful, beautiful.
yes,
I do remember that second Mortal Kombat movie had a lot of CG at the end because I
Yeah.
remember characters turning into dragons or something, and even back in 1997 or whatever, just thinking, what the hell am I looking at? Like, this is just inconceivably
Oh, I'm
bad.
looking at the dragons right now. They look.
Yeah, you're unlocking some really old repressed memories for me of the dragons.
yeah, it is. It is truly like a different era of. A friend and I will often watch kind of bad horror movies, you know,
Right.
but that or sometimes good ones too. But a lot of times, so this does not look real. I'm not convinced that this looks like someone's fake
You
PS.
you don't watch it to be convinced. You
You're
just
right,
watch it to.
right.
Right. But
Yeah,
even as a child who wants to be impressed by flashy things,
yeah. It is. It is.
you
There
look
is
at that
there.
and like I like the first Mortal Kombat movie, but I'm not going to pretend it set a watershed for cinema, But that
No,
second one was just, even as a child, you knew you were getting ripped off watching that second one.
right. Like I mentioned it a lot because as a child I watched that original Mario Brothers movie a lot because it had Mario in it, even though it was like it's weird and inscrutable and like barely Mario. But I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, yeah, there's something going on here.
Hmm.
I like that the
Well,
Goomers are weird huge guys or whatever. But they don't. When I say they don't make them like they used to, I'm talking about how there's clearly like I'm looking at a screen cap of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and it looks clearly a big set, but it also looks incredibly empty at the same time and fake. It's like a beautiful uh, intermingling of aesthetics.
It looks like to me, it looked like one of those Japanese movies from the early 2000s where they decided we're going to green screen this entire live action movie for no particular reason. It looks like that, but with about 1/10 of the budget.
Right.
It's just nauseating to look at.
Or it looks like it looks like a game show, if that makes sense. It looks like a high budget game show.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about that comment is they did end up making a TV show after this movie. It's like one of those Hercules Xena shows,
Yeah.
but with 1/100th of the budget. And then after that, they tried to do a strange live action interactive voting thing on the internet. And we're talking like circa 2001. So if you ever go and look at the clips, they're
Oh my God,
basically
that sounds
unwatchable. They're so
wonderful.
yeah.
it was supposed to be like pro wrestling where they'd show little vignettes of fights and then you would well
Oh
the idea
damn!
was that
What's the name of this? I need to check it out.
oh god, it's Federation of Special Forces or something. I forget the name, but they wanted people to vote with some fake currency or something. This was supposed to be the replacement on TV for Star Trek Voyager. That's what they were pitching it as. And it's
Holy
just
shit.
it looks like it was filmed in someone's backyard. It is the most incomprehensible thing you've ever seen. I remember the big wrestling type plot twist was that one of the characters was being put on trial for murder at the Mortal Kombat tournament. I just remember just when I
Yes,
found
this
this
will
thing in the
defeat
late
Star Trek
2000s.
Voyager.
Yes, exactly. This thing that is barely watchable on a potato, and these episodes are 40 seconds long. Oh,
Mortal Kombat
it baffles the mind
Conquest.
that was the TV show.
Okay.
That was the one that actually aired. And
Oh.
and then I'm gonna have to look it up. Give me a second.
Okay. This is very important. So this I am obsessed with this idea now. Oh, is it Defenders of the Realm? No, that was the cartoon.
Yeah, I think that's a cartoon.
I trust you. I'm going to trust you to find it. Out of print card game, a theatrical stage show. What a
I think a theatrical stage for Mortal Kombat, that's
Yes.
just another level.
The the
I
audience
think
participated by
making
yelling "run" or "kick him" as part of the live action.
that's the choose the voting option.
Please say there's video of this. Oh, I think there is at least promotional video of this. Thank you. I'm going to save, not closing that tab. But yeah, there
I
is.
All right, Federation of Martial Arts is what it's called. Mortal
Okay.
Kombat
Whoa.
Federation of Martial Arts.
Did they
Uh,
not have like the Mortal Kombat? Did they not buy out anything? That's why it was called different, or
No, I think they just decided that was going to be the name, but they
oh, I
did
see.
they got one actor from Mortal Kombat Annihilation. That was their big selling point. They got the guy who
Lovely.
played Jax. He's in it, and everyone else is just some random person they found on the street.
Oh, I wish I wasn't that serious.
There we go. I posted the link in the chat there.
Yes, I am looking at it. I have one of the 40-second clips up. I can't. My thing is I can't look at audio, but it's
Right,
Jax pacing back and forth, and now he's yelling, and he's clearly on a. Oh my God, the way this guy is descending from the sky
Yes.
I'm gonna definitely look it up later.
is truly magical.
Yes. Well, the two things to know without audio is that one, nobody can act, nobody, and secondly, you can barely hear what they're saying because they've got techno music blasting over the whole thing. So it's 40 seconds of watching people pace around in front of a green screen, and then they say, "Who won the fight?" And apparently, it was up to the internet to decide. But
It was.
I have no idea who
In
even
this situation,
watched
it
this
was
thing.
Rain. He descended and then like karate chopped Jax in the back, and then it said P1 win or whatever.
Right.
And round one.
And I'm going to guess that one attack took the entire duration of the video.
No, I think Jax
Like
paced
a
back and
Tabata
forth for about
episode.
25 seconds.
Oh. Well, yes, that's the kind of quality you can expect from every single episode.
Oh, that's a true pleasure. I love art. Art's great. I love that we do it. I love that we make it.
I just realized that the original Mortal Kombat was directed by Paul Anderson, the same guy who did the Resident Evil and the Monster Hunter movies.
Oh yes, the guy you make sure you don't.
I enjoyed one of the names you just said. Yeah.
The guy to not be confused. That I make sure to not confuse. I'm like Paul Anderson. Like, wait a minute. No, that's Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, this is Paul W.S. Anderson.
Very different guys.
Yeah.
I'll give you one bit of trivia before we monopolize your entire show with Mortal Kombat.
No, this is what I'm here for.
The guy who produced these movies, a guy named Larry Kasanoff, who later went on to do an animated movie called Food Fight, which is sort of notoriously, shoveled $1 billion and was watched by no one and is just awful. He was the producer of all this stuff, the movies, including the good one, but also all this awful stuff that followed. And then when the company that made and owned Mortal Kombat got sold to Warner Brothers, he sent them a lawsuit insisting that everything that everyone ever loved about Mortal Kombat was his doing. He created it. He owns it. And if Warner Brothers wanted to do anything with the franchise, they owed him $40 billion with a B.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think he got paid out.
Did he even get a fraction? If so, that was worth it to be so delusional.
Well, I think he's doing good because
I think they paid him to be quiet. That's all they did.
He was the director for the aforementioned Mortal Kombat Live tour.
Live tour, wow.
Yeah. Well, he came back because he was an executive producer for that Mortal Kombat. I always forget there's a Mortal Kombat movie that came out in 2021.
Look, if he's listed as executive producer, maybe they just put his name there just to shut him up.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But
yes, I think they're legally obligated to give him a credit, but he doesn't do anything.
He also produced Bobbleheads the movie, and is attached.
Every negative insinuation I've made about this guy, I take it all back.
He's also
the world needed bobbleheads.
To untitled Tetris sci-fi project with TBA. Oh, what a Food Fight. He was also in Food Fight as Cheezel T. Weasel. what a bizarre collection of brands. It is weird because he
I've
has
not
like
seen Food Fight, but I'll take your word that he was in it. That sounds right to me.
I do not know who Cheezel T Weasel is. I don't know. I don't know which brand that guy is. I don't know. Is he the? He's probably not the dolphin. Who is Cheezel T Weasel?
Food fight? What the hell is this?
Oh,
I've never seen
Anna.
this.
You're in for a treat of. I mean, don't watch it.
I
But,
don't
I'm
think
scared
so.
to
I'm
click on
never
it.
gonna watch it.
Yeah.
it's the real kind of movie that like if you have a friend group that like enjoys watching real horse shit, Food Fight
Damn.
is among them. It's like a
It's
I
one of
think
those movies that
I'll
would have
manage
looked bad if it
just to
came out
cover.
when
I
it was
don't think
new,
my
but it
time
just
is worth this.
yeah. It looks fake. It's so bad it looks fake almost. It looks like a parody of bad movies.
to bring it back to video games,
Yeah.
it looks like one of those trailers you'd see at a trade show for a game you knew was never going to come out.
Yes.
Except eventually it did come out. Like
Right. And
10 years later than anyone might have cared about it.
And it is truly like full of, attached to it. There's a theater in Boston that hosts something called Trash Night once a month, and it is like truly just like terrible movies, but they always have like they're full of names that you recognize, but it's a movie you've never heard of, and it's truly terrible, and it reminds you that there's so many people who like just are in movies. People are in just like so many movies.
So many movies.
And it's like why is oh he executive produced the classic class of 1999. My God, that's a hero.
I wonder if he'd come on Indiepocalypse.
I've thought about pulling like getting weird guest polls on the show before. I made a comment once about if you're familiar with Phantasmagoria, the
game, absolutely.
Yes, the Roberta Williams. I love both of those games to varying degrees. I think they're modern classics. I think the true pleasures. But I there was a video I'd watched for a long time, and one of the playthroughs I'd watched of that, they kept commenting on how the actress keeps like playing with her hair constantly. Like the main actress is the main character. It's an FMV game for context. And I had this realization, like one of those, those shower style revelations where you realize something you've been thinking about for a decade, and it was like, oh, she keeps adjusting her hair because she is resetting her character model. And then I just kind of said that, like I kind of posted about that on Twitter, and then like the actress herself commented, like somehow it found a way to her. She's like, yeah, it was a very weird shoot because we had to constantly like reset things and do like a lot of like stilted kind of animations. And I was like, could I get people from Phantasmagoria on this show? Can I get Curtis Craig on the show?
You might as well try.
Yeah.
I love these little like tidbits about like development
Yeah.
and like the things that make their way into the game and how interesting it is. Sometimes the things that fans latch onto the most are just flat out just mistakes.
Right.
And it's hilarious in that regard.
Yeah, I will often find myself like if I've seen a movie a lot or if I'm disinterested in a movie, like drifting towards like extras in the background and like focusing on them and seeing what they're doing, what they're up to. This person who's like has no speaking role, they're paid a little to be an extra and like seeing what they're doing and what they're up to. And like they stick with you sometimes. They're fascinating little performances. They're cool things. I want to close. Now that you've given me Federation of Martial Arts within this Discord, I don't need the tab open anymore. But
well, you don't need the videos anymore, I would hazard to say.
Well, listen, who knows what kind of YouTube night we're going to have one day with friends and be like, let's fire up Federation of Martial Arts and we'll do our own voting. Who will win? But yeah,
you know who will win? The audience, the viewers. They will win.
Yes. Yes, the audience is the real winner. Vote 1 on Indiepocalypse if you want to know who's going to win this radio show today. Text 2 to Indiepocalypse, and then etc. etc. Anyway, we're cresting 2 hours. We could keep talking forever, but the show's got to end eventually. So it's going to end now-ish, or closer to now than later. We are. Thank you all for being here. This is a fun thing to do every week. Probably one of my favorite little parts of this whole greater Indiepocalypse venture that I do is finding a way to hang out with people that are in Indiepocalypse or just like in art in general. It's a treat. Does anyone have any last burning questions or statements or etc. before I start to actually wrap it up?
Just thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you for inviting us.
inviting.
I'm glad to have you all here. So we're going to go proper style. Maddie, where can people find your stuff if they're looking to find your stuff on the internet?
So I publish on itch.io under the profile name 9coffees. But if you just Google Itch.io, the good weapon, it'll come up as the first search result.
Oh, good SEO. Love to have good SEO.
If you play it, I would love it if you left a review or a rating. It's okay if you don't like it. You can even leave a negative review. I really don't care.
Right. I don't know how much reviews factor in itches, but it's nice to have your art interacted with, you know?
Yeah, so it's the ranking for itch is videos first. So videos in the comments will rank
Yes.
your game higher, followed by a comment, followed by a review, and then followed by you putting it on a list.
Huh.
Yeah, so if anyone puts a review or leaves a comment, that's extremely helpful for any indie devs out there trying to gain some sort of, reach.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, or just like, or I guess that's what pushes a lot of horror games up to the top, because those pretty much, even the biggest dregs of like the most unplayable things among them have like 6 videos of people playing through them.
Yeah, and I do think that's partly why so many get made. And if you're gonna exploit the YouTube algorithm system, you might as
Yeah.
well. More
Right.
power to you.
It is a weird like self-perpetuating system where they race to the top because people make videos of them, so people make videos of them, so they race to the top, and etc. etc. Ooh, I'm looking at the fresh right now. It's a good collection of fresh stuff in there, including someone I need to remember to email. I'm looking at. I'm like, I need to remember to email that person about something that I'm doing, a project that is upcoming. That's coming out soon.
Intriguing.
Yes. My the subtlest of Indiepocalypse or Andrew based NDAs.
Oh, I actually have a question.
Yes.
Directed towards you, Anna, if that's okay.
No problem.
So with your publishing, if people wanted to publish their comics, do they reach out to you or do you choose from a pool of people?
You can always reach out. Like, I don't have eyes everywhere, but usually when it comes to anthologies, I do choose people who are there. But if you send me something, I'll remember you, and then maybe next time I do something, I will reach out. So always welcome to look at stuff.
Oh yeah. Sounds wonderful. It's a good system. I just have a lot of artist friends, and I saw your clubs in, and I really love the
Oh
look of it.
yes, please,
Yeah, so I'll
please
probably
direct
refer
them
it
to me.
over.
Yeah, that like there's speaking from my curation background, just getting people in front of your face, even if it's not for now, it is sometimes for later. Uh, but speaking of clubs in, Anna, where can people find it if they're looking for it?
Okay, it's Clubzine with a K. Anywhere, everywhere.
Yes.
I'm most active on Instagram, although I don't really like social media. So probably Kickstarter or somewhere if you want to know
Right.
about my upcoming projects.
Yeah, there's like I have found a great love for just how I use Kickstarter now basically is a comic imprint is saying we're printing our next, our spring collection, and I go back spring collection, and I'll get it, and like, it's a model that works. I think I got in at number 4, like physical wise. And that was like my entry point into Clubs in, because also
Oh,
there is finite time, everyone's got finite eyes, so it's helpful to always share things around where you can. But they're also all as PDFs. GK, where can people find your work if they're looking to find your work or your stuff you're writing? What is your best source, would you say?
Well, I'll lead off with saying thank you for inviting me. I don't know if you remember, maybe you've blocked it out, but we tried to do a podcast about a year and a half ago, and I decided out of indie solidarity I would use some streaming app made by some indie guy that absolutely did not work and massacred the entire thing. And I have no idea why you invited me back, but I appreciate it, so thank you.
Wait. Now there's something I actually am not remembering. What is this?
You know what? If you don't remember it, let's just pretend it didn't happen.
Oh, now I'm genuinely
I think
curious.
that works out well for everyone.
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
well,
I'll ask.
you
off
know
air.
when you... Okay, you ask.
Because now I'm very curious, because I'm like, I feel like I remember
It's
it.
not that I'm embarrassed, but I'm glad it... well, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was a technical mess, and I'm glad you forgot, because it meant you give me a second chance. So hopefully it paid off for you.
I'll give people 30,000 chances unless they do something especially terrible. That is mostly morally especially terrible. But let's get to the business. Where can people find your stuff?
All right, let's get to it.
Yeah.
Geez, what would people even know me from, I wonder? Well, I poke around on the Retronauts blog, long-running retro games podcast. I'm not on the podcast, so if you were infuriated with me talking over people, you don't have to worry. I don't do that there. I help out on Shmuplations, which is a crowdfunded website that translates vintage game developer interviews. I sort of keep the hamster running on the wheel over there. The most of the work is not mine, so again, if you do contribute, you don't have to worry about putting money in my pocket. What else? I've been writing for Indie Sushin lately, which is Daikon and Rencon's blog of Japanese indie games. I've given them, 2 or 3 things recently, and they've been on Indiepocalypse, I believe.
Their friend Indie Sushin has its origins within Indiepocalypse.
That's right, yes.
That
I recall now that you mention it.
Collab issue was that bundle came through. It was Indiepocalypse presents Indie Sushin.
So it was. You're jogging my memory.
That's since run into a blog. I would argue a more safe and sane and sustainable method than constantly producing indie game anthologies.
Indeed. I'm in awe of the fact that you do it. But yes, I'll just wrap up by saying you can find me at all those places. You can find me at co-host on Gosokyu, GOSOKKYU. I cannot say that I post a lot of interest, but, that's where I am. I'm on Twitter as well until certain Japanese people leave, and then I'm free to go.
Yes.
And I will say one more thing before we all leave. There was something I was wondering why you invited me here, because I don't produce games. I would not say I'm a particularly notable writer. I was wondering, if I'm coming, why would I be here? And there's something I've been cooking up for a long time, inspired by Indiepocalypse specifically. And I decided not to announce it because you were doing a pledge drive, and I think people should give their money to you and support what you were doing, because what I'm doing, we talked about imitation before. I'm basically looking at your thing and thinking, well, I'll do it this way.
Yes.
So I have something cooking in that vein that if people follow me, it will eventually happen. Once my bank account has more than 0 in it, because I just got cleaned out like a week ago. But
very excited for
that. It will eventually be back. Oh, thank you. And I will say one thing.
Yes.
There are a lot of aspects where I've deliberately try to go left where you've gone right, just because maybe out of pride, I don't know, just doing things differently. But when it comes to physical games, that cassette idea you've had, I can't beat it. I might have to steal it or just pay you to do it.
I encourage people to steal it.
I can't
all
come
the
up with
time.
an alternative.
No, it feels so like when I stole it from people making, because when I was making the physical edition for Taylor McHugh's game, I saw that people were storing Game Boy games in cassette cases, and I good idea, and I stole it. I was like, you can just put a USB stick inside that, and I am not, I've said on the show, I'm just ripping off comic anthologies. My contract is literally a comic anthology contract. Rip off everywhere, rip and steal, as the Doom guy once said. It is I am big on just. Sorry.
If I end up doing this, I'll probably just have you do it rather than steal it, because you've given me a lot of, I don't want to say inspiration, because I might flame out and do nothing, and then
right.
I kind of don't like when people have to look back when they do something and then they see a lot of people that have inspired them and they kind of don't like what they did. So I won't say you inspired me, because I might end up doing nothing, and then that's something that's got to hang on your resume. But
that's fine.
I will say, yes, I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate being able to talk to these guests too, because I'd seen the zine, I'd seen Clubs in Periphery, and thought, wow, the person in charge of this has a really good eye for curation. And I hadn't played The Good Weapon. I'd seen it. And then it came on Indiepocalypse, and that really impressed me, especially the way the text is formatted. The way the text is formatted visually, and all the little subtle things that are done to, take advantage of the fact that you're playing a game, and that the presenting of text is, well, it's not as static as I'm used to seeing from things in Ren'Py and that. And I thought this developer not only has a really solid focus of what they're able to do within these constraints, but I thought they were really punching above their weight in terms of providing something really evocative and eye-catching. And it kind of bums me out to hear that you're maybe not going to break even on it, because I think there are a lot worse games that charge a lot more and frankly do not deserve the attention they get. So to Clubs In and to The Good Weapon, I hope people, put their money where their mouth is and show some support.
I want to really say thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me. The texting is the thing I'm most proud of, because it is, in a sense, when you're making a visual novel, you're directing it. And text and pacing and all that stuff is generally the final process where, when editors say, "Oh, we'll find the movie in post," right? And you're finding all the emotions, you're finding all the best parts, the best cuts in post. So yeah, I'm very glad you noticed it. Thank you very much. I did write a blog post about, I did write a blog post on the textual parts on my co-host. That's cohost.org/9coffees. And you can find it right up there if anyone ever wants to.
Oh, perfect. Yes, no, I recommend, much like Indiepocalypse stuff. I'm also, this show itself is because I'm a big fan of guest style podcasts. Hey, this podcast is but an avenue into finding other people that you will like in the future, and I hope you follow these people into their various works. Just check it out. And I'm closing more tabs, getting rid of business, cleaning things up. But yes, I am hope this is anyway. Wrapping up, I almost fell into just talking a lot more. And I'm going to properly wrap up. I, of course, am Andrew. I host this thing called Indiepocalypse. One of the people here is in it. If you can go to indiepocalypse.com and just buy it. I have my own just damn website over there. Indiepocalypse.com/tapes is where you get those neat physical editions that were being mentioned earlier. Or pizzaprinks.com/tape market. where people can just like you can either get people's games or submit to have your own game carried there. It's kind of like I'm just like, oh, it's cheap to do. I should just open a DIY publishing. Or if you want to learn how to do it yourself, I've never. I mean, I kind of have written some of the stuff towards a proper blog post of how to do it, but like the time to write like a proper blog post of like, hey, here's my whole process and my materials and all that stuff is something I just don't have the time to do. And also, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if you need it necessarily. It's you buy cassette cases, you buy USB sticks, and you cut something into a J card. That's the fancy name for cassette tape inserts. There's also U cards and other types of cards, but I prefer J cards because they're the simplest. If you want to submit a game, it's indiepocalypse.com/submit. There's also a Patreon, of course, indiepocalypse.com/Patreon, where you can, for only you subscribe at the regular levels and you get Indiepocalypse like you'd expect to. But if you subscribe at $5 per month or $50 in a year, you get only the commission games. Like, for instance, the aforementioned Toho Lonely Lovely Bonfire. It was a game commissioned for Indiepocalypse. I forget the number. Not too. I was gonna say a few issues ago, but it's probably like 10 issues ago. Somewhere in between 40 and 49. You can pick that up there, or you can pick up those games there. I think that's all of my URLs. Oh, currently the Indiepocalypse pledge drive is going. It's where I try to raise money for Indiepocalypse and try to break even on Indiepocalypse, which is a fool's errand. But it at least at the worst case scenario, it is I get a paycheck. I get a royalty payment for all the artists involved, all the contributors involved in Indiepocalypse, and I think that's all of them. I think that's the whole of everything. I don't remember, but I think that's good. Maddie, Anna, GK, thank you for joining me here one more time on the show. Glad to have you all here. Glad we could do this. Glad we could organize it all. A true pleasure to have you here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anytime, and
Yes.
sorry for rambling.
No. This show is here for rambling. This show is here for talking a lot. It's my goal is to help create a more open kind of platform, let's insert a place where you can feel like you can show up and just ramble a lot. A place that a game art space doesn't feel like it's closed off. It feels like anyone can walk in and out as they please. But that said, I'm leaving this show. We're closing it down. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.